Most people believe productivity problems come from poor time management. We feel behind, overwhelmed, and rushed. So we search for better schedules, tighter routines, and smarter calendars. We download apps. We set reminders. We plan every hour of the day. And yet we still feel stuck. This is where David Kadavy asks us to pause and rethink the problem. What if time was never the issue? What if the real challenge is how we manage our minds? Time is fixed. Everyone gets the same 24 hours. But mental energy is not fixed. Attention is not fixed. Creativity is not fixed. Some hours feel effortless. Other hours feel impossible. Kadavy argues that productivity advice often ignores this reality. Time management treats all hours as equal, but your mind knows better. Your brain has rhythms. It has peaks and valleys. It has moments of clarity and moments of fog. Trying to force productivity during mental lows is like trying to sprint uphill. You move, but it costs more than it should. This is why people feel burned out. They are not lazy, they are mismatched with their mental state. Kadavy introduces a simple but powerful shift. Instead of asking, "How do I manage my time?" ask, "What is my mind capable of right now?" This question changes everything. It replaces force with awareness. It replaces guilt with strategy. Many people feel ashamed when they cannot focus. They assume something is wrong with them. But often the problem is timing, not discipline. Your brain is not a machine, it is a living system. It needs cycles of effort and rest. Kadavy explains that creativity especially cannot be summoned on command. You cannot schedule a breakthrough like a meeting. Ideas emerge when conditions are right, and those conditions are mental, not chronological. This is why working longer hours does not always lead to better results. Sometimes it leads to worse ones. When the mind is exhausted, output becomes shallow. Work becomes reactive instead of intentional. You answer emails, you scroll, you feel busy but not fulfilled. Kadavy challenges the cultural obsession with busyness. Busy has become a badge of honor, but busy often means distracted. Busy often means mentally fragmented. True productivity feels different. It feels calm. It feels focused. It feels meaningful. Kadavy uses the metaphor of surfing. Time is the ocean. Mental energy is the wave. You cannot control the ocean, but you can learn when to paddle and when to wait. Trying to surf without a wave leads to exhaustion. Waiting for the right wave leads to flow. Mind management is about recognizing those waves. It is about aligning work with mental readiness. This approach removes the constant pressure to perform. Instead of demanding output, you listen inward. You observe your thoughts. You notice resistance. Resistance is not an enemy. It is information. It tells you something is off. Maybe the task is wrong for the moment. Maybe the environment is wrong. Maybe your mind needs space before it can focus. Kadavy emphasizes that ignoring resistance creates friction. Working with resistance creates momentum. This chapter invites a mindset shift. Stop blaming yourself for lack of productivity. Stop trying to dominate time. Start understanding your mental state. When your mind is clear, protect that time fiercely. When your mind is foggy, don't force creativity. Use those moments for rest, learning, or low-effort tasks. This is not about doing less. It is about doing the right thing at the right mental moment. Over time, this approach leads to better work and less stress. You feel more in control without being rigid. You work with yourself instead of against yourself. Kadavy closes this idea with a simple truth. You don't need more hours, you need better alignment. When you manage your mind, time stops feeling like the enemy. It becomes a container, and inside that container, your best work can emerge.
Modern culture teaches us that productivity equals constant effort. If you are not busy, something must be wrong. Rest is often seen as laziness. Slowing down feels irresponsible. David Kadavy challenges this belief at its core. He explains that hustle culture confuses motion with progress. Doing more does not always mean doing better. Many people fill their days with tasks that feel urgent but are not important. They respond to messages instantly. They attend endless meetings. They check notifications compulsively. At the end of the day, they are exhausted, yet they struggle to point to meaningful progress. Hustle creates the illusion of productivity. It feels satisfying in the moment, but it often avoids the hardest work. Deep thinking requires stillness. Creativity requires mental openness. Hustle leaves no room for either. Kadavy compares hustle to running on a treadmill. You are moving constantly. You are sweating, but you are not actually going anywhere. The mind becomes overloaded. Attention fragments into tiny pieces. Focus becomes shallow. When the mind is constantly interrupted, it loses depth. Ideas become reactive instead of intentional. This leads to work that feels rushed and uninspired. Hustle culture also promotes guilt. If you rest, you feel behind. If you stop, you feel unproductive. This guilt pushes people to override their mental signals. They ignore fatigue. They ignore boredom. They ignore creative resistance. Over time, this leads to burnout. Burnout is not a lack of motivation. It is a lack of recovery. Kadavy emphasizes that the brain cannot stay in output mode forever. Just like muscles, the mind needs recovery to grow stronger. Hustle ignores this biological reality. It treats the brain like a machine, but the brain is an ecosystem. It needs cycles of intensity and rest. Kadavy introduces the idea of productive slowness. This does not mean procrastination. It means allowing space for thought. It means stepping back to see patterns. Some of the most valuable work happens when nothing appears to be happening. Ideas connect in the background. Insights surface unexpectedly. Hustle blocks this process. It fills every mental gap with noise. Kadavy also points out that hustle rewards visibility, not value. Tasks that can be seen get prioritized. Tasks that require thinking get postponed. But thinking is where leverage lives. A single clear idea can save hours of execution. Hustle flips this equation. It sacrifices clarity for speed. Another danger of hustle is comparison. Social media amplifies productivity theater. People share highlight reels of long hours and big wins. This creates pressure to perform constantly. But what is visible is rarely sustainable. Kadavy reminds us that deep work is often invisible. Thinking looks like doing nothing. Reflection looks like idleness. But beneath the surface, important mental work is happening. Hustle also narrows perspective. When you rush, you rely on habits. You repeat familiar patterns. Innovation requires pausing long enough to question assumptions.
Slowness creates awareness. Awareness creates better decisions. Kadavy encourages redefining productivity. Productivity is not how much you do. It is how much impact your work creates. Impact comes from alignment between energy, focus, and intention. This chapter invites you to question the noise. You do not need to earn rest through exhaustion. You do not need to prove your worth through busyness. Your value is not measured in hours. It is measured in clarity and contribution. When you let go of hustle, you make space for meaning. You trade frantic motion for deliberate progress. You stop chasing productivity, and you start designing it.
Not all hours of the day feel the same. Some moments feel sharp and clear. Other moments feel slow and heavy. David Kadavy explains that this difference is mental energy. Mental energy determines how well you think, create, and decide. Time does not change productivity. Mental state does. Most productivity systems ignore this truth. They assume effort can be applied evenly, but the brain does not work that way. Mental energy fluctuates naturally. It rises, it falls, and it follows patterns unique to each person. Kadavy encourages observing these patterns instead of fighting them. When mental energy is high, deep work feels natural. Ideas connect easily. Focus feels effortless. This is the best time for creative thinking, writing, designing, problem-solving. When mental energy is low, forcing deep work creates resistance. The mind becomes distracted. Frustration increases. Progress slows down. This does not mean the time is wasted. It means the task is mismatched. Low-energy moments are better for shallow work, administrative tasks, organization, reviewing, simple execution. Kadavy stresses that productivity improves when work matches energy. Misalignment creates exhaustion. Alignment creates flow. Flow feels different from hustle. There is less effort and more absorption. You lose track of time. Work feels rewarding instead of draining. Mental energy is influenced by many factors: sleep quality, nutrition, stress levels, emotional state, even the previous task you worked on. Switching from shallow tasks to deep tasks takes mental effort. This transition cost is often ignored. Kadavy explains that multitasking drains mental energy rapidly. Every switch taxes attention. The brain must reset context. Over time, this leads to mental fatigue. Fatigue reduces creativity. It narrows thinking. It pushes the brain toward familiar solutions. This is why creativity often feels blocked after busy days. The mind is depleted. Kadavy introduces the idea of energy mapping. This means noticing when you feel most alert and when you feel least focused. Tracking energy reveals hidden patterns. Some people peak early in the morning. Others peak late at night. There is no universal schedule. Productivity advice fails when it ignores individuality. Copying someone else's routine often leads to frustration. Kadavy encourages experimentation. Try different types of work at different times. Notice what feels natural. Notice what feels forced. Your body gives signals, so does your mind. Boredom is a signal. Restlessness is a signal. Clarity is a signal. Instead of overriding these signals, listen to them. Mental energy also changes within a single work session. Focus has limits. Deep thinking cannot be sustained indefinitely. Pushing past these limits reduces quality.
Short breaks reset mental attention. Stepping away often leads to insights. This is why ideas appear during walks or showers. The mind relaxes its grip. Connections form naturally. Kadavy warns against glorifying exhaustion. Feeling tired is not proof of productivity. Often it is proof of misalignment. Sustainable productivity feels balanced. There is effort, but not struggle. There is focus, but not tension. Understanding mental energy leads to self-trust. You stop forcing yourself to work the wrong way. You stop judging low-energy moments. Instead, you use them wisely. Over time, this approach builds confidence. You learn how your mind works. You stop fighting it. You start cooperating with it. Kadavy's core lesson in this chapter is simple. Your brain is not broken. It is patterned. Learn the pattern. Design your work around it. When you respect mental energy, productivity becomes sustainable. Work feels lighter. Results improve. And effort finally makes sense.
Most people believe creativity starts when they sit down to work. They open a document. They stare at the screen. They wait for ideas to appear. David Kadavy explains why this approach often fails. Creativity rarely begins on command. It begins earlier, long before you touch the keyboard. The mind needs preparation. Ideas need time to incubate. Incubation is the hidden phase of creativity. It happens when you are not actively trying, walking, resting, showering, doing simple, repetitive tasks. These moments feel unproductive, but they are essential. Kadavy explains that the brain works in two modes, focused mode and diffuse mode. Focused mode is analytical and controlled. Diffuse mode is relaxed and associative. Creative insight emerges when these modes alternate. When you only stay in focused mode, creativity stalls. The mind becomes rigid. Connections stop forming. Diffuse mode allows ideas to drift and recombine. This is why insights appear when you step away. The pressure disappears. The mind breathes. Kadavy uses the metaphor of planting seeds. You cannot force a plant to grow by staring at it. You prepare the soil. You plant the seeds. Then you wait. Creative work works the same way. Reading, researching, collecting ideas. These activities plant seeds. Rest and boredom water them. The mistake most people make is skipping incubation. They demand results immediately. This creates anxiety. Anxiety blocks creativity. Kadavy explains that boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the doorway. When the mind is not stimulated, it turns inward. It starts making connections. Constant stimulation shuts this down. Phones, notifications, entertainment, they fill every mental gap. No space remains for ideas to form. Kadavy encourages reclaiming boredom intentionally. Leave space between tasks. Take walks without headphones. Allows silence. This silence is not empty, it is fertile. Many people feel guilty when not actively working. They believe productivity must look busy, but creativity looks quiet. It often looks like nothing is happening. Kadavy also warns against forcing creative output. Forcing creates tension. Tension narrows thinking. Narrow thinking reduces originality. Creativity thrives in relaxed focus. That relaxed focus is built over time, not in a single sitting. Preparation matters. Exposure matters.
rest matters. Kadavy introduces the idea of creative cycles: input, incubation, output. Skipping any stage weakens the result. Input without output creates stagnation. Output without incubation creates shallow work. Balanced cycles create originality. Another key insight is trusting the subconscious. The mind continues working even when you are not aware of it. This background processing is powerful, but it requires trust. You must stop micromanaging your thoughts. Kadavy suggests ending work sessions before exhaustion. Leaving work unfinished creates creative tension. The mind continues processing in the background. Returning later feels easier. Ideas are already forming. This approach reduces resistance. Work feels inviting instead of demanding. Creativity becomes a conversation, not a battle. The chapter reframes what it means to work. Thinking is work. Resting is work. Waiting is work, as long as it supports the creative process. Kadavy's message is liberating. You are not failing when ideas do not appear instantly. You are incubating. Respect that phase. Protect it. When you do, creativity stops feeling unreliable. It becomes something you can trust, not because you force it, but because you prepare for it.
Focus is often treated like a muscle you can command. People tell themselves to just concentrate harder. They try to overpower distraction with willpower. David Kadavy explains why this approach backfires. The mind resists force. When you demand focus, tension appears. That tension creates mental friction. Friction slows thinking. It drains energy. It makes work feel heavy. Forced focus often leads to shallow attention. You stare at the task, but your thoughts wander. You reread the same sentence repeatedly. You feel mentally stuck. This is not a lack of discipline. It is a signal of misalignment. Kadavy emphasizes that focus is an outcome, not a command. It emerges when conditions are right. Those conditions include interest, clarity, and energy. When interest is low, focus struggles. When clarity is missing, focus collapses. When energy is depleted, focus disappears. Forcing focus ignores these prerequisites. It treats the symptom instead of the cause. Kadavy introduces the idea of gentle structure. Gentle structure guides attention without pressure. It creates invitation instead of obligation. Examples include time-limited sessions, clear starting points, specific, narrow goals. These reduce overwhelm. They lower resistance. The brain prefers clear boundaries. Open-ended tasks create anxiety. Anxiety reduces focus. Breaking work into small, defined chunks helps the mind engage. Kadavy explains that motivation often follows action, but action must be approachable. If a task feels too big, the mind avoids it. Starting small builds momentum. Momentum fuels focus naturally. Another danger of forcing focus is ignoring mental fatigue. Focus has limits. Pushing beyond those limits reduces quality. The mind starts making careless mistakes. Creativity declines. Judgment weakens. Kadavy argues that stopping at the right time preserves future focus. Ending sessions while still engaged creates desire to return. Ending in exhaustion creates avoidance. He also discusses the role of enjoyment. Enjoyment increases attention. When work feels meaningful or playful,
focus deepens. Rigid seriousness often kills creativity. Kadavy encourages experimenting with different approaches. Change locations, change formats, change tools. Novelty refreshes attention. Routine can dull it. Focus thrives on curiosity. Curiosity invites exploration. Forcing shuts it down. Kadavy also warns against moralizing focus. Being distracted does not mean you are flawed. It means something in the environment or task needs adjustment. Blame creates shame. Shame reduces motivation. Curiosity creates solutions. Another insight is the role of transitions. The mind does not instantly switch modes. Moving from reactive tasks to deep focus requires time. Rituals help signal this shift. Simple actions like clearing a desk or starting with a familiar task. These cues prepare the mind. They reduce friction. Kadavy reframes focus as cooperation. You work with your mind, not against it. You listen to signals. You adjust conditions. You remove obstacles. Over time, focus becomes more reliable, not because you force it, but because you respect it. This chapter teaches a crucial lesson. Discipline alone does not create great work. Understanding does. When focus feels hard, pause. Ask what the mind needs. When you stop forcing focus, focus starts showing up on its own.
Not all work is created equal. David Kadavy distinguishes between deep work and reactive work. Deep work is focused, creative, and deliberate. Reactive work is urgent, shallow, and often externally imposed. Checking emails, replying to messages, attending meetings, these are mostly reactive tasks. They demand attention, but rarely advance important goals. Deep work requires sustained concentration. It produces insights and meaningful output. Kadavy explains that most people spend far more time on reactive work than deep work. This creates a sense of busyness without progress. Reactive work fills the calendar. It creates the illusion of productivity. Deep work shapes results that matter. The problem is that reactive tasks are addictive. Notifications trigger dopamine hits. They feel urgent. They pull the mind outward. Before long, you are constantly reacting. Deep work requires defending mental space. It demands boundaries. It often feels lonely. This is why it is easy to avoid. Kadavy introduces the metaphor of the ocean. Reactive work is the tide. It pulls you in all directions. Deep work is the current. It takes effort to enter, but once engaged, it carries you forward powerfully. The challenge is separating the two. Many people blur the lines. They start a deep task and get pulled into reactive distractions. This reduces quality. It also wastes energy. Kadavy emphasizes batching deep work. Set aside blocks of time with no interruptions. Create a protected zone. Notify others. Turn off notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. This creates a mental container. The mind can focus fully. Deep work also benefits from rituals. Start sessions with a small, clear action. End sessions with reflection. Rituals cue the mind for engagement. Kadavy warns that reactive work is not evil. It is necessary. Tasks must be handled, but balance is critical. If reactive work dominates, creativity suffers. If deep work dominates, urgent matters accumulate. Kadavy teaches prioritization by value, not urgency. Ask, will this task move the needle, or is it just noise?
Reactive work should support deep work, not replace it. Another insight is the importance of timing. Some people can enter deep work only at certain times. Attempting it at low energy moments reduces effectiveness. Scheduling deep work during mental peaks increases results. Kadavy also emphasizes recovery. After intense focus, the mind needs a break. Ignoring recovery leads to diminishing returns. Switching from reactive to deep work takes intention. Kadavy encourages small experiments. Block 30 minutes. Observe energy and output. Gradually extend sessions as capacity grows. He also notes that deep work is cumulative. Skills improve faster when effort is concentrated. Shallow work produces little learning. Deep work builds mastery. Over time, consistent deep work leads to innovation. Reactive work, if managed poorly, only produces busyness. Kadavy reframes success metrics. Focus on output quality, not sheer volume. Ask, did this work matter? Did it use my mind well? Over time, deep work habits transform careers. They create a body of meaningful work. Reactive work fills the space, but rarely leaves impact. This chapter teaches a crucial lesson. Protect your deep work. Respect your mental energy. Separate focus from reaction. When you do, your mind finally works with you. Your results multiply. Your work feels satisfying, and busyness no longer confuses you.
Your environment shapes your mind more than you realize. David Kadavy explains that distractions are often environmental, not personal failings. A cluttered desk invites a cluttered mind. Notifications constantly pull attention outward. Even small interruptions break focus. Designing your workspace is not about aesthetics alone. It is about reducing friction for deep work and increasing friction for distractions. Kadavy suggests starting with the obvious. Remove anything that tempts mind-wandering: phones, social media, and noisy notifications. Then, create cues for focus. A clean desk signals readiness. A notebook signals preparation. A quiet room signals mental safety. Rituals are part of the environment. Starting work with a specific action primes the brain. Ending work with reflection closes the loop. Even small changes have large effects. Kadavy compares the mind to a garden. Weeds grow where they're allowed. Plants flourish where conditions are nurtured. Your mental garden behaves the same way. The right environment encourages growth. The wrong environment encourages chaos. Lighting, sound, and posture all matter. Kadavy emphasizes that consistency creates habit. When your environment signals the same cues daily, the mind learns to cooperate. When it is inconsistent, focus becomes unpredictable. Another factor is spatial separation. Deep work often thrives when separated from reactive work. Use different rooms or setups for different tasks. This creates clear boundaries in the brain. Your brain learns that sitting in this spot equals focused thinking. Sitting elsewhere equals reactive or shallow work. Kadavy also recommends limiting multitasking tools. Browser tabs, messaging apps, and email are attention leaks. Turn off or restrict them during deep work. Set specific windows for reactive tasks. This prevents constant switching. Visual cues help focus. A single monitor can reduce overwhelm. Closed doors signal privacy. Even background music can support or hinder work. Experiment with sound to find what enhances attention. Kadavy also highlights social environment. People influence focus unconsciously. Colleagues who interrupt frequently drain mental energy. Supportive environments reduce friction. Communities that value deep work reinforce habits. Surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals is an environmental boost. Environment also includes mental framing. Remind yourself why this work matters. Meaning transforms space from neutral to motivating. Kadavy stresses that small adjustments compound. A single tweak to reduce distraction saves multiple hours over weeks. Your environment can either fight you or support you. Treat it intentionally. Design it to invite deep work naturally. Kadavy's key insight is simple. You cannot rely on willpower alone. Your brain obeys the cues around it. Shape those cues carefully. When you do, focus comes easier, work flows more naturally, and mental energy is conserved for what matters most.
Freedom sounds appealing. Unlimited options feel exciting. But too much freedom can overwhelm the mind. David Kadavy explains why constraints often boost creativity. Constraints focus thinking. They reduce decision fatigue. They act as guardrails for the imagination. Without limits, the mind wanders endlessly. This creates anxiety and paralysis. Constraints provide boundaries within which ideas can flourish. Kadavy uses the metaphor of a sandbox. A sandbox is small. It has limits. But within those limits, children play freely. Ideas bounce and interact in controlled space. Too much empty space can feel intimidating. Constraints narrow the playground without shrinking creativity. Examples of constraints include time limits. A short deadline encourages concise thinking. It forces you to prioritize essentials. Another example is content rules. Limiting materials or formats sparks originality. Kadavy highlights constraints in famous creative works. Many iconic designs emerged under strict limits. Artists, writers, and inventors thrived when conditions were restricted. Constraints trigger problem-solving. They push the mind to explore unconventional paths. Without limits, creativity can stagnate. It drifts into indecision. Constraints reduce mental friction. They make choices easier. Kadavy also emphasizes personal rules. Setting internal boundaries helps the mind focus. For example, writing only a certain number of words per session, or using only a single tool for design. Constraints are not restrictions. They are catalysts. They shape creativity like a mold shapes clay. Kadavy also warns against misusing constraints. Constraints must be meaningful. Arbitrary limits create frustration, not focus. They should guide, not block. Another insight is the combination of constraints with curiosity. Limits focus energy. Curiosity directs it. Together, they produce originality. Kadavy suggests experimenting with playful constraints. Set unusual rules. Give yourself creative challenges. Odd limitations can spark surprising solutions. Constraints also improve efficiency. By narrowing choices, decisions are made faster. Time and energy are conserved. Mental energy is redirected to idea generation. Kadavy explains that many people fear limits. They associate freedom with creativity. But too much freedom scatters the mind. Properly designed constraints focus it. They reduce overwhelm. They increase confidence. The brain responds positively to structure. Boundaries give the mind clarity. Kadavy also notes that constraints create accountability. When rules exist, the mind self-corrects. When no rules exist, distraction dominates. This principle applies to writing, designing, coding, and thinking. Every field benefits from deliberate boundaries. Kadavy's core message is simple. Freedom alone does not produce creativity. Limits, when chosen wisely, amplify it. Constraints are tools, not obstacles. They focus thought. They conserve energy. They spark innovation. When you embrace constraints, creativity stops being random. It becomes predictable. It becomes reliable. And the work you produce gains depth, clarity, and originality.
Everyone has unique mental rhythms. Some people feel sharp in the morning. Others hit their stride late at night. David Kadavy explains why ignoring these natural patterns is a productivity trap. Trying to force work when energy is low wastes time. It leads to frustration. It reduces quality. The brain operates in cycles of energy and focus. These cycles are predictable if observed. Kadavy encourages tracking your peaks and valleys. Notice when tasks feel effortless. Notice when tasks feel impossible. This awareness allows you to schedule work wisely. High energy periods are best for deep work, creative thinking, complex problem solving. Low energy periods are better for shallow or administrative tasks, emails, meetings, routine work. Matching work to energy conserves mental resources. It reduces resistance. It improves output. Kadavy explains that this approach requires experimentation. You cannot assume your schedule matches someone else's. Trial and error reveals your unique pattern. Morning larks may produce brilliant ideas at dawn. Night owls may innovate under moonlight. Respecting your rhythm is not laziness. It is efficiency. It is working with the brain, not against it. Kadavy also emphasizes the importance of transitions. Switching tasks abruptly can disrupt rhythm. Plan smooth handoffs between energy-intensive and lighter tasks. Rituals help anchor these transitions. A short walk, a stretch, a moment of reflection. These cues signal your mind to shift gears. Ignoring natural rhythms leads to constant tension. You fight yourself all day. Results become inconsistent. Energy drains faster. Creativity suffers. Kadavy compares rhythm to music. Each person has a tempo. Trying to dance to someone else's beat feels awkward. Finding your own tempo creates flow. Flow amplifies productivity naturally. Kadavy also addresses decision-making. High energy periods are ideal for complex decisions. Low energy periods are better for routine choices. This prevents errors caused by fatigue. It reduces stress. It also preserves energy for critical moments. Another insight is alignment with lifestyle factors. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, and stress influence rhythm. Ignoring these amplifies low energy periods. Kadavy emphasizes experimentation over perfection. Observe patterns, adjust schedules, test new routines.
Notice what improves focus and output. Over time, self-knowledge grows. You learn when to push and when to pause. Working with rhythms is more productive than forcing strict schedules. It respects your mind's natural flow. Kadavy also highlights seasonal and weekly variations. Some people are sharper on certain weekdays. Energy may fluctuate with weather or workload. Flexibility within structure is key. Rigid adherence to fixed hours often backfires. Kadavy frames natural rhythms as an ally, not a constraint. They guide the mind toward sustainable productivity. When you align with your rhythm, work feels effortless. Tasks that once drained energy now flow smoothly. Creativity comes at the right time. Focus sustains longer. Mental energy lasts. Kadavy's core lesson is clear. Stop fighting your mind's natural rhythm. Observe it, respect it, schedule work around it. When you do, productivity becomes predictable, stress decreases, results improve, and your mind works with you, not against you.
Rest is often seen as laziness. David Kadavy challenges this belief. He explains that rest is a vital part of productivity. The mind is not a machine. It requires recovery to perform optimally. Boredom, breaks, and downtime are not wasted moments. They are preparation. They allow subconscious processing. Rest improves problem solving. It sparks creativity. It restores energy. Many people feel guilty when they stop working. They assume more effort always equals better results. Kadavy argues the opposite is true. Overwork reduces efficiency. It diminishes focus. It blocks insight. Rest creates space for ideas to surface naturally. Even small breaks matter. Walking, stretching, or brief pauses reset attention. Longer periods of rest are also critical. Sleep consolidates memory. It strengthens learning. It supports creativity. Ignoring rest leads to burnout. Burnout is not lack of talent, it is lack of balance. Kadavy emphasizes that guilt around rest is cultural, not factual. Society glorifies constant motion. We are told that busy equals important, but busy often means distracted. Rest is productive when used intentionally. Plan downtime as part of your work cycle. Schedule rest as seriously as meetings. Treat it as essential. Kadavy also suggests changing perspective. Rest is not a reward, it is an investment. It fuels better performance later. When you rest, the mind reorganizes information. Connections form unconsciously. Solutions appear seemingly out of nowhere. Even stepping away from a complex problem helps. The brain continues working in the background. Kadavy compares the mind to a pot of water. Stirring constantly prevents anything from settling. Rest allows ingredients to blend naturally. Creativity simmers during downtime. Another key insight is the importance of playful rest. Engaging in enjoyable activities activates the brain differently. Music, art, nature, or light hobbies recharge energy. Joyful breaks enhance focus more than forced idleness. Kadavy also warns against guilt-driven busyness. Working while tired reduces quality. It prolongs tasks. It increases mistakes. Rest, when embraced, shortens work time. It improves output. It makes work feel lighter. Kadavy teaches that mental energy is cyclical. Ignoring the cycle creates tension. Respecting it leads to flow. Flow emerges more reliably when rest is prioritized. He encourages listening to internal signals.
Fatigue, distraction, or resistance often indicate need for pause. Responding to these signals is productive, not lazy. Another lesson is integration. Rest does not need to be separate from work. Breaks, movement, and reflection can occur within the workday. Even micro-pauses restore attention. Kadavy reframes success metrics, not hours worked, but clarity gained, not motion, but insight. When you let go of guilt, productivity improves naturally. Work becomes sustainable. Stress decreases. Energy lasts longer. Creativity is more consistent. The core message is simple. Rest is part of work. Embrace it. Trust your mind to recharge. When you do, results improve effortlessly. Your mind works smarter, not harder, and your life feels balanced.
Many people measure productivity by hours worked. David Kadavy argues that this approach is flawed. Time spent does not equal value produced. You can be busy all day and accomplish very little. Focus on output alone can be misleading. Shallow work often inflates perceived productivity. Deep work may appear invisible at first. The challenge is knowing what truly matters. Kadavy encourages measuring alignment. Ask, are my tasks matched to my energy? Are they advancing meaningful goals? Are they improving my skills? Progress is not just completion. It is learning, insight, and growth. Quality matters more than quantity. Deep, thoughtful work creates leverage. It multiplies impact over time. He introduces the concept of mental alignment metrics. These include clarity of thought, creative breakthroughs, and sustained focus. Tracking these is more valuable than tracking hours. Kadavy also explains the danger of social comparison. Seeing others' productivity can distort perception. Social media amplifies this effect. People display highlight reels, not reality. Comparison often leads to guilt. Guilt reduces mental energy. It discourages experimentation. Kadavy advises internal benchmarks. Measure your own growth. Notice improvement over time. Track small wins and learning moments. Consistency matters more than intensity. A single hour of aligned, deep work is more valuable than 10 hours of scattered busyness. Kadavy also highlights feedback loops. Reflection helps recognize patterns. Journaling or notes can reveal trends in energy and output. Reviewing your work uncovers which strategies are effective. Adaptation is key. What works one week may need adjustment the next. He stresses that productivity is dynamic, not static. Mental energy, focus, and creativity fluctuate. Measurement should respect that reality. Kadavy warns against arbitrary metrics. Counting tasks completed or hours logged can mislead. It encourages shallow effort. Instead, focus on meaningful outcomes. Another key insight is learning to value progress, not perfection. Small, incremental improvements compound over time. Consistency beats intensity. Kadavy compares it to compound interest. Each small, aligned effort builds cumulative results. Tracking progress this way encourages self-compassion. You notice improvement even on low-energy days. You recognize contribution beyond immediate output. Measurement then becomes empowering. It guides action rather than punishes. Kadavy also emphasizes celebrating insight. Creative breakthroughs are milestones. They may not be visible externally,
but they represent real progress. Another lesson is flexible evaluation. Some periods are for learning, some are for execution. Measurement should reflect the type of work being done. Kadavy reframes productivity as alignment over action. Aligned work produces meaningful results efficiently. Misaligned work produces busyness without value. By focusing on alignment, stress decreases, quality rises, results improve, energy is preserved. Mental clarity becomes more consistent. The chapter closes with a guiding question. At the end of each day, ask, did my work today align with my mind, energy, and goals? If yes, you are progressing. If no, adjust. Kadavy's approach shifts focus from time to mind. It transforms productivity into a sustainable practice. Work becomes measurable by value, not effort. By tracking alignment, you finally measure what matters.
The central lesson of David Kadavy's book is simple. Time management is not the real problem. The real challenge is managing your mind. Your attention, focus, creativity, and energy dictate what is possible. When you align work with your mental state, productivity improves naturally. When you fight your mind, productivity suffers. Kadavy emphasizes observation over force. Notice your energy. Notice your focus. Notice your resistance. Listen to signals your mind provides. This is the foundation of mind management. Rest is productive. Incubation is essential. Constraints are tools, not obstacles. Your environment shapes thought. Natural rhythms guide focus. Deep work is more valuable than constant motion. Reactive work supports deep work, not replaces it. Creativity cannot be summoned on demand. It emerges when conditions are aligned. Kadavy compares mind management to surfing. Time is the ocean. Mental energy is the wave. You cannot control the ocean, but you can ride the waves skillfully. Misalignment leads to exhaustion. Alignment leads to flow. Flow feels effortless. It feels focused. It produces meaningful results. Kadavy reframes productivity as alignment with the mind. Time is fixed. Energy and focus are variable. Learning to manage them transforms work. This requires self-awareness. It requires experimentation. It requires trust. Trust in your natural cycles. Trust in rest. Trust in reflection. Trust in preparation. Kadavy warns against hustle culture. Busyness is not achievement. Motion is not progress. True work emerges from intentional alignment. Measuring progress by hours worked is misleading. Measure by impact, insight, and clarity instead. Mental energy is cyclical. Work with it, not against it. Rest is productive. Boredom and downtime are part of creative work. Constraints focus the mind. The environment cues behavior. Small rituals reinforce attention. Deep work is protected work. Reactive work is necessary, but should not dominate. Natural rhythms guide the best timing for tasks. Mental alignment multiplies results. Stress decreases. Quality increases. Kadavy's philosophy is liberating. You are not failing when you resist. You are learning how your mind works. Productivity becomes less about willpower. It becomes about cooperation. Work becomes predictable instead of exhausting. Creativity becomes reliable instead of random. Rest becomes valuable.
instead of guilty. The final message is clear. Stop trying to control time. Start managing your mind. Respect energy, focus, and natural rhythm. Embrace rest, preparation, and incubation. Design your environment and constraints thoughtfully. Track alignment, not busyness. When you master your mind, work feels effortless. Results come naturally. Stress fades. Energy lasts. Creativity flourishes. This is the essence of sustainable productivity. Your mind is the most powerful tool you have. Learn it, respect it, ride its waves, and you will accomplish more with less struggle. Master your mind, not the clock. This is the path to productive, fulfilling work. This is how you turn effort into impact. This is how you work smarter, not harder. This is how your mind finally works with you, not against you.